an event that I consider to be one of the most important events of the past year. That's the Rage Against the War Machine rally this February 19th at the Lincoln Memorial, the afternoon of Sunday, February 19th. Rage Against the War Machine. I'm going to be speaking there. And you know who else is going to be speaking there? It's a jack-off nightclub comedian named Jimmy Dore. Welcome, Jimmy.
Hey, Max. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm good. Good to see you.
I'm looking forward to February 19th. It's good to see all the people who are attacking it, which actually means that we're doing something. So if nobody was upset about this rally, I would be worried that, holy shit, we're not actually bothering people. But it turns out that we are. And so that's why all the bad faith attacks are coming from everywhere, from every angle you can think of, no matter who it is, Tulsi, Ron Paul, Scott Ritter, Jack, and me, everybody. It's
Chris
great.
Hedges. Cynthia McKinney.
Yeah.
Me, Anya Parampil, Dennis Kucinich, noted right-winger Dennis Kucinich.
Noted right-winger. The guy it was so dangerous they had to gerrymander him out of a district. So that's the guy who actually, maybe a little anti-establishment. Good for Dennis Kucinich. Good for being against the war. There's only one condition that I have for people who want to come be a part of this anti-war rally, and that is that you want to stop the wars. That's it.
Okay, I'm not gonna want to be in there with like sig heiling neo-Nazis and that Patriot Front group that looks like a bunch of federal assets and they all show up in the same Nazi costume with masks on. I wouldn't want to be among them, but that's not what's going on. And a lot of times people can be right about things who I don't agree with about other things, but this is the most important cause of our time. This is about civilizational survival. February 19th, Washington, D.C. If you're serious about ending this war, if you're serious about stopping nuclear war, if you're serious about disarmament, if you're serious about de-escalation, if you're serious about peace, if you're serious about stopping imperial encroachment, if you're serious about challenging NATO, if you're serious about freeing Julian Assange and his freedom are among the list of demands that all speakers and participants have agreed to. If you're serious about ending the secret government with an over $80 billion black budget known as the CIA, which carries out terror attacks, kidnappings, and torture around the world. If you're serious about those things, you will be there. If you're not serious, you'll find ways of sabotaging this.
Well, I think that's what's happening is that, of course, the reason why there is no left movement in America and there's absolutely no anti-war movement in America, it's because left organizations are, as we're finding, just like FBI was infiltrated all the social media organizations, and now the CIA is just right on camera now in corporate media. They don't even try to hide it anymore. So that they've infected every left organization, and they've turned it. What do? They divide and conquer, and that's exactly what's happened. And so that's what they're trying to do now. And the thing is, these people who want to, instead of participate in an anti-war rally, want to talk about, I disagree with the people who are speaking's politics. That's just ridiculous, right? So that shows that you're a cosplayer when it comes to stopping a nuclear war. That's the equivalent of saying, sure, I'd like to stop a nuclear war, but not with those people. I mean, it's comical. Yeah. It's comical. Yeah. That's how ridiculous it is. And it reveals those people to be unserious, insincere people who are cosplaying at anti-war. And so if you want to be a leader, if you're a part of an anti-war organization that doesn't want you to take part in an anti-war rally, you should be a leader and go to that anti-war rally and lead. That's what leaders do. Leaders don't take direction, but leaders give direction. Leaders lead, and they lead by example. So I'm going to be there, and I hope they keep attacking it, because that shows you that it's powerful. They're calling it everything in the world, right? Yeah. And so that means they don't want this to catch on, because you got lefties there, you got libertarians there, you got former Congress people there and military people there. You got all types of people there, and that's what scares them. That's the only thing that scares them. If they can keep us hating half the country and half the country thinking the other half of the country is their enemy, instead of with the exact opposite, which is that we have a common enemy. It's the military-industrial complex that is bankrupting this country. By the way, we're ending the way all empires end. They just put 3 more military bases in the Philippines recently. I swear to God, they just did that. So that's what this is all about. That's what actually scares them. So that's why they have to attack this actually extra hard, because it's got people from all spectrums of the political spectrum. And so that's why it scares them. Wouldn't you agree, Max? That's what actually scares them. If it was just a bunch of just a bunch of Greenpeace people, or if it was just a bunch of libertarians, or if it was just a bunch of it wouldn't have much impact. But the fact that it hands, that's what gives it its power. People who disagree vehemently about other things. There are people there who want to end Social Security and take Medicare away from people. That's not what this is about. This is about, we have to first stop nuclear war, and then, hey, guess what? We can fight about all that other stuff.
That's right. And one of the things that I think threatens some of the people attacking this rally is that they can't be in charge of the entire thing and decide who to exclude, because they love to exclude people. Yes. They love to come up with a laundry list of boutique social issues that you have to sign on to, every single one, and there's no debate allowed, in order to participate in a rally about something else, which ostensibly is what your organization is supposed to revolve around, which is the war state. This is the professional sectarian left that I've had to deal with for years and years and years, whether it was on Palestine or Syria. And then, on COVID, they excluded everyone from their little meeting rooms. If you had any problem with thousands and thousands of workers being fired because they didn't want to take an experimental gene therapy injection that doesn't prevent transmission or infection, they would completely castigate you. And then you wouldn't be allowed to speak at their anti-war rallies because you opposed lockdowns that sent people into suicidal ideation and opioid addiction and kept children out of school for a year. Because you opposed that, the professional sectarian left would exclude you. And what this rally is not doing is excluding people, including them. They would be welcome to speak and participate, but they don't want to. They want to attack because they've lost control, because the professional sectarian left has failed in every respect to form a viable anti-war movement for the past 20 years. And here we are. They want the anti-war movement to be 100 people all wearing the same shirt with multiple advanced degrees, who agree on all the same boutique social issues, who can fit in one room, and they control everyone and everything everyone says. And this rally has broken that model because it's just open. It's what you make of it. It's what anyone wants it to be. And so they are working to sabotage it. And I know from having worked with some of these people in the professional sectarian left that they destroy every institution that they become a part of. They burrow from within, they get in there. And then if you are trying to work for a greater goal within that institution and it doesn't follow their sectarian line, then they start to attack you from within and run campaigns against you. And then ultimately they try to destroy the whole organization unless you get them the hell out of there. And so every institution, every NGO, every media organization that they get in, they're a problem. And now they're becoming a problem within this when all we're trying to do is stop a nuclear war. And yeah, I deeply disagree with a lot of the other speakers on things like unions or crime and these kinds of issues. I'm going to go out and I'll organize for, teachers unions to fight privatization in the future. This doesn't stop me from that. The libertarians, I barely have any, and we'll talk about them in a second. They're not going to put a chip in my brain that suddenly changes me and transforms me into some kind of crypto Nazi. I can go up there and say whatever I want, as can any left-wing speaker.
Yeah, I had a point and I just forgot it, but
well, sorry, I was ranting. But well, let's address some of the controversies, because my friend Medea Benjamin, who's someone that I've worked with for years, who's done some of the most important anti-war organizing, is not allowed to speak you're not allowed to speak because there's naughty people on stage. It's like Ned Flanders won't allow his kids to have sugar. Remember Rod and Todd? They're like, we're not allowed, Bart. We're not allowed to have the sugar. So Medea's not allowed by people like these professional sectarians who are in her organization. And so she had to issue a statement. And I find this really upsetting, honestly, that someone of Medea's stature with her experience and wisdom has to even do this and say this. And I've been trying to discuss this with her directly. She was just in Cuba. She's been fighting the siege of Cuba for longer than I've been alive, or as long as I've been alive. But Medea Benjamin said, people are asking me why I'm not speaking at the Rage Against the War Machine rally. I supported the rally from the time of its conception, and I support it today, even though I will not be one of the speakers, because the organization I have been a part of for 20 years, Code Pink, urged me not to speak. The Code Pink staff, meaning people who work for her, felt that my participation would hurt the group's standing with other coalitions committed to gay rights, women's rights, and anti-racism. They felt that Jackson Hinkle has taken stands that are anti-gay, anti-trans, anti-feminist, and Islamophobia. I guess they mean Islamophobic. And they were concerned about the sponsorship of the Libertarian Party's Mises Caucus, Mises Caucus, after Ludwig von Mises, the Austrian economist.
This is exactly my joke. I want to stop a nuclear war, but not with those people. I want to spoke with people who wear pink hats and vote the right way, and have all the same sensibilities that I have. That's not how anti-war shit works.
Do you think the people in the Don?
That's why in the last 20 years, the war machine has fucking exploded while you people did shit like this. It's laughable. You're a joke. That's a joke.
It is a joke, and everyone's laughing at that.
That's not. So here's the thing that they don't understand. They don't understand how to fucking do anything, and they don't understand how to organize. And what they could do is take a lesson from Christian Smalls, right? So Christian Smalls organized a union on Staten Island against Amazon, right? And now the way these people would organize a union, where they go, hey, who here agrees with us on LGBTQ? Okay, you can be in our union. You can't. Hey, who here agrees with us on Social Security and Medicare? Okay, you can be on you. Who doesn't? You can't. That's not how who here's a gun nut? You're out. Who here's a libertarian? You're out. Who's here's a Proud Boy? You're out. Who here's about you're that's not how you organize. And that's what they're pretending how you organize. No, what they're doing is revealing that they're cosplaying as anti-war people. It's a social thing for them. They're not real, because that's not how you organize anything. That's not how you organize a union. That's not how you organize an anti-war rally. You don't start excluding people on other parts of their politics. And I was talking to Jay Buffont from our Revolutionary Blackout Network. He's gay. And he said, the whole point is, if I went to a rally and there was people who didn't agree with me on LGBTQ, and then maybe they meet me and then they realize we have more in common than that separates us, and they get to know me, and maybe what they thought wasn't true about me. And isn't that the way we're supposed to do this? And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly how you're supposed to do it. But these people it's just a social club to them. That's all that is.
Yeah, and it threatens their own identity when
it's a social club. They're not actually about converting people. They're not actually about getting people. They're not about winning people over with their arguments. They're about excluding people in a social club. Yeah, guess what? You're not an activist. You're a fucking social club, and you're revealing it.
You have to meet people where they are. Not everyone is going to agree with you out there in the Rust Belt, for example, about social issues, but more and more of them are pissed off about this war and billions of dollars going to Ukrainian warlords and Zelensky. It's very easy to break through to them about this. Maybe then you can break through to them about some other issues, but this is just about excluding a majority of people, not just in the United States, but across the global South, who do not agree about these issues either. I don't think the people waging the peasant rebellion in Peru against the illegal overthrow of Pedro Castillo will agree with Code Pink staff on all the issues, nor would the people I met in the rubble in the Gaza Strip who had their homes destroyed by the Israeli apartheid military. And they don't care if it's some woke grad student with blue hair who's helping them get out from under the boot of empire, or if it's a camo-clad gun-toting Trumper. They just want the bombs to stop falling. And that's what we are trying to do. And let me make another point about organizing, because I went against my community to try to educate Americans about the real apartheid Israel they didn't know. And I've spent years of my life doing it, reporting from the field, writing books, doing documentaries, whatever I can do. And I've organized with Palestinians who are extremely conservative Muslims. I've spoken at the American Muslims for Palestine conference 4 times. They practice gender segregation at that conference. Okay. Women have to go into a separate entrance for men. Many of the younger women don't like it, but the constituents, that is their culture, and they actually support that. And I, as a speaker, am not going to say, well, you're separating men and women, so I'm not going to organize with you, even though you have a national coalition and fighting apartheid Israel, because the most important thing for me is the struggle against Zionism. It's for Palestinian women, however they want to live culturally, to be able to at least travel outside of their walled-in ghetto, to not have a walled-in ghetto, to not be refugees. And it's the same thing here. Do you think the people under the bombs of NATO in the Donbass who have been being killed and massacred for 8 years care if everyone is pro-trans at this rally?
It's crazy.
By the way, I don't agree with Jackson Hinkle on a lot of social issues. He knows that. I'll say it to his face, but
I don't agree with Ron Paul on a lot of stuff either.
Yeah.
I don't agree with Chris Hedges on COVID. It doesn't matter what you agree with people on other shit.
Yeah, I'll say it to their face, but Chris Hedges is still my friend.
He was still a hero to me.
Yeah, I mean, he was in many ways a mentor to me. And so we can disagree about many things.
And I can still learn from people I disagree with.
Well, this to me is the cause of our time. And, I believe that many more people will sign on to this rally from the left who are overlooking this. But Chris Hedges, I spoke to him on the phone the other day about this rally. And the first thing he said to me was, after 9/11, the only people who were doing anything against the Afghan war were the Avakian people from the Revolutionary Communist Party. Like, I don't care if they're Maoists. Like, I'm not a Maoist, but they were out there doing something and they were giving me a platform to rail against this war. You're right on. I've spoken on their radio shows. I think Bob Avakian's like kind of like seems like a cult leader to me, but I don't care. You want me on your show? I'll come on. But the professional sectarian left, they actually officially boycotted me because I opposed the mass firing of workers for not taking a experimental gene therapy injection, which has been proven dangerous to women of childbearing age, has been banned for young people across Scandinavia and Western Europe, and does not prevent transmission or infection. But there's no debate allowed. There's no discussion. It was like, with that, I was immediately castigated by these people. And so they are the problem. They are the problem. We need a mass movement. We're in the heart of the empire. We're in the imperial core, and we can't do it alone.
There's supposed to be, we're supposed to have values, right? And what do you have values for? Not for when it's easy to follow them. You have to have values because it's going to be hard, and you're going to have to stick by those values. Jon Stewart said one time, I'll never forget, he said, if you don't follow your values when it's hard, then they're not values. They're just hobbies.
Yeah.
And so the value of free speech and bodily autonomy has to be a value. And people were revealed that they didn't really have that value, that they could give that value up just by being lied by a propaganda machine funded by billions of dollars by Bill Gates and Big Pharma. And so it was nuts what happened. Turns out we were right. Of course, the Supreme Court in New York overturns that ban on and all those. They let 70,000 healthcare workers be fired in the middle of what they called a deadly pandemic, and no one gave a shit about it. Nobody cared about those people who were treating COVID patients just weeks earlier without a vaccine, and now it's just it revealed a lot of people, and so it made strange bedfellows. It really did. I would not think that the people who vote Democrat would be cozying up to the security state and the censors. And what somebody said, hey, when can you point to a time in history when the people doing the censoring turned out to be the good guys? Can you say, no, you're the bad guys. Anybody doing the censoring is always the bad guys. But what can you ever point to a problem that censorship ever fixed? No, there's never. So it's nuts to see what has happened, and it's nuts to see the dividing lines now politically, and it's nuts that people think that it's a legitimate reason not to go to a anti-war rally because you disagree with the politics of the other people speaking there. That just reveals you to be a child like thinking, and it's not how organizing works.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was really instructive to me, Jimmy. You were part of this as well, to be at the Defeat the Mandates rallies,
That's
because
right.
those were rallies where people just put aside all their differences. You had
That's
so
right.
many random, it was a real motley crew on stage at those rallies to defeat the mandates, which were disastrous on so many levels. And, you had
And
us
those
on
people.
stage with Tremel Thompson. He was a union leader in New York, an organizer of the subway union. You had Joe Rose, a Harlem-based public school worker who was seeing the damage that the lockdowns and the mandates were doing to young kids, uh, especially poor Black kids in Harlem. And she just got out there on the street corner with a bullhorn and started organizing. She organized with people who are America First types from Staten Island. They put aside all their differences. And then you had Kwame Brown, former Washington Wizards player, up there with right-wing truckers, hippies from the naturopath movement. All kinds of people were up there for one cause, and it was massive. The rally that took place in Washington and Los Angeles was massive because they weren't putting up all of these conditions. It was one issue, and that's the same thing that's happening here. So it's very difficult to organize an anti-war movement in the United States right now, especially when it's a proxy war where the US is providing the weapons, the AI. Basically, the Ukrainians are proxy American soldiers, but they're dying and we don't care. The American war planners, the sociopaths, the neocons, they don't care about Ukrainian blood. They just care about sending more and more American bullets. So Americans don't see that they're coming back home draped in American flags and coffins or with their legs blown off like Iraq. And you have a Democratic president. So you're not going to get a bunch of liberals out there marching like in the glory days of the anti-war movement against Bush's Republican war.
Right.
And Matt Gaetz, Jimmy, has just introduced a resolution, the Ukraine Fatigue Act, to defund the war.
Yes.
What is
Now,
Ro Khanna and AOC going to say about that?
well,
He's a racist. So
he's had. So I'm not supposed to try to end a war with Matt Gaetz. I mean, of course. I mean,
yeah,
doesn't Bernie Sanders work with Senator Lee? And I mean, that's what gives things power. Is when people diametrically opposed on other issues can come together on something. That's what I remember when Newt Gingrich started to come around on climate change in like 2007 and 8 and something like that, and started doing commercials about it. And I was like, holy shit, they're gonna. That means that there's going to be something happening about this. Well, then that all went to shit. But that's what gives things power. Okay, so.
yeah.
And everybody knows that, right? And so the war machine laughs when they do this, when they let woke, politics of any kind get in the way of, and people think it's bad. They're like, I remember at first they were like, well, we don't want to get negative press, and I was like, that's the only kind of press you're going to get. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
So you should hope for as much of it as possible, because it's not it's a badge of honor to get negative press from the fucking military industrial complex funded press. What is wrong with you? That's exactly what you want. I can't wait to they're already doing it. The Newsweek just put out a hit piece yesterday about this and with me, and called me a right-wing conspiracy theorist. That conspiracy that Russiagate was bullshit. Turns out I was right. That the gas attacks was also bullshit. I was right about, and now I don't know what other thing that could be. And then, okay, COVID. The narrative, they lied about everything. They lied about masks. They lied about herd immunity. They lied about natural immunity. They lied about lockdowns. They lied about transmission. They lied about contraction. There wasn't anything they lied about. And so all you had to do was look, but that's also against the cult. You can't, it's very cult-like thinking. And so you can't run an anti-war movement like a cult.
Yeah.
You have to be open to everybody. And the only thing they have to be is against the war.
Yeah. And We will see. But what we will see how successful this is. I'm not an organizer. I have detailed knowledge of what's going on behind the scenes, the organizing, the mistakes that are being made. But I'm not an organizer, so I can't be in total control of whether it succeeds or not. It's really up to all of you who are watching this to come to Washington, get offline, show up in real life, show the war state that you want to change their strategic calculus, that they understand that Americans from all political backgrounds and walks of life oppose this insane march to nuclear Armageddon that's stripping money out of our pocketbooks and putting it in the hands of Ukrainian Nazi warlords. It's your decision. You decide. Get off the chat, show up on February 19th, and send a serious message, and send a message to the sectarian elements that are trying to tear this down, that they don't control the anti-war movement, that they have failed to do anything with for 20 years. They have failed in every respect for 20 years. They don't have a record to stand on. So it's time for people across the country
I mean,
to rise up.
you're talking about the anti-war movement of the last 20 years. What do they have to show for it?
Yeah.
I don't know, military, even under Trump, they exploded the military budget, $132 billion. That's not, people forget, that's not just 1 year. That's every year in perpetuity. Once they raise it, it never goes back down. It's not just this year. And by the way, that's enough. That was enough money to fix homelessness 5 times over when Trump was president. So this is how all empires end. The empire's ending, but the petrodollar is going away. So that dollar is not going to be the reserve currency of the world anymore. It's going to fuck. We are pretty close to being Brazil as it is, except for a handful of cities in America. It's people, and so the bigger problem is, then this reveals this, right, too, is that someone smarter than me, I heard talking about how in the other parts of the world, the left movement is always connected to the workers and the blue collar people, and that's not the way in America. The left is like this middle class journey, and they care more about getting people of color on a board and having equity on a board instead of a minimum wage or a living wage, and getting health care for their workers and stuff like that, unions and stuff. So this all reveals it. And so what people learned, what workers should have learned through the pandemic, was that they don't care about you, and you are essential. They're not essential. You're essential. And while you were out there working during the pandemic, they didn't give you any more money, and they took $5 trillion and gave it to all their friends.
Yep.
And while they still didn't give you health care, and they still didn't give you living wage, they still didn't give you any kind of protection, and they still got homeless people living under every bridge. Yep. So people need to know that they need to lose faith in the system. Joe Biden and the Democrats are not going to stop a war. AOC and Bernie Sanders are not going to stop a war. What's going to stop a war is people getting in the streets and stopping a war. And it's got to start. It's got to start now. And the people who want to cosplay, you can't pay attention to those people. And you have to hope for negative press, because that's the only press we're going to get. So all these people will find out about it. And so everybody's welcome, even the cosplay people. Show up to an anti-war rally and learn how it goes. This is how it works.
Well, that's the thing. If they showed up, I wouldn't be like, "How dare you show up? You attacked me."
Come on.
And I'm reading some of these attacks. The top Google result for Rage Against the War Machine, one of them says the rally's racist. So they're it implicitly says, I'm whatever, a racist for joining it or something. It also erases the black speakers. But even if the author of that or anyone promoting that showed up, I wouldn't hold it against them if they just show up. I don't care. I'm not going to make it personal. They're the ones who make it personal. And just one more thing about Ron Paul. Ron Paul is 87. Ron Paul is, of anyone who ever showed up on a debate stage of the major two parties, he has been the one candidate who consistently challenged the war state and sent a very strong, and he's continued to do so at the Ron Paul Report, along with Daniel McAdams, who's also going to be at the rally. Ron Paul's going to be there in person. He doesn't do anything in person anymore. He lives in like Tyler, Texas he lives in Texas, and this rally is so important to him that he's coming in to speak there. And what has Ron Paul, I totally disagree with, like, you know, eliminating the government, all that libertarian stuff. But let's get rid of the FAA and, you know, privatize that. No, but Ron Paul always also opposed the drug war, the racist drug war waged by Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, and Jim Crow Joe Biden. And you know who endorsed Joe Biden? Bernie Sanders, the choice of the professional sectarian left. And the drug war has done so much harm to Black America, but they always wind up supporting those candidates and tailing the Democrats. So, you know, is Ron Paul just fundamentally evil? Is he so evil that you will boycott it when Dennis Kucinich is also on stage, someone who supports a very strong public sector and teachers unions? Is it really worth it? It's obvious that there is a narcissistic tendency at play here. This is about control. This is about ego, and it's not about this is about ulterior motives.
Oh, I experienced similar things over Forced to Vote, where people, you know, I wasn't allowed to be an organizer because I wasn't given an official badge by somebody or something, and everyone forgetting that AOC was a bartender 2 years before. You know,
Yeah.
anyway, so that's just a way to discredit. You're right. There's a lot of egos involved, which is some stunning to me. And so if somebody came along with a good idea, hey, if somebody has another war rally, I'll go to it. No problem. And I have no ego about it. If somebody, let's do it.
Yeah. And I'll, you know, I'm not allowed to speak at those other rallies because I oppose the Branch Covidian PSYOP, but I'll still go there. Anyway, let's bring in the buzzsaw. Aaron Monte's in the house.
Hey guys, that was a great discussion, and I agree with everything said. And I was thinking, like, remember in 1982 there was like 1 million people in Central Park protesting nuclear war, and it was effective. It helped lead to the momentum that caused arms control agreements between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. And there's 1 million people in Central Park. And Max, I put the video there.
Yeah, I got it.
But it's just, I'm thinking, as whenever I see that footage, I mean, that's a fraction of what we can get out now. And how are we ever possibly going to get out 1 million people to oppose nuclear war? Even now we're in a time that is just as dangerous as it was in the early 80s, if not more dangerous. How are we going to get people out if we're so divided and so sectarian?
Maybe we promise lunch.
Promise. yeah, but then it becomes, who's the vendor, Jimmy? Is the vendor, are they using
is it kosher?
Yeah, is it kosher? Exactly. Are they using the proper
honestly
pronouns?
the last massive rally I went to against the system that, well, actually one of the most massive rallies I went to that was just against the two-party system and corporate politics was outside the Democratic National Convention in 2000. Al Gore and Joe Lieberman were on the ticket, and Rage Against the Machine played a free concert outside the Staples Center in LA. I was there, and they got 100,000 people out there. It was the Democrats were freaking out, and I was kind of near the stage, and I saw this group of some 20 people wearing masks walk towards the stage. They were black bloc, you know, and you didn't know who they were. They all went up to the stage, gave Zach De La Rocha the finger, and then they all walked towards where the cops were and just started throwing bottles at the cops. Within 5 minutes, the police had sent in horses, tear gas the entire rally, and the entire grounds of Staples Center was cleared out thanks to 20 sectarian freaks from Black Bloc who probably were cop infiltrators.
Yeah, that's exactly what that is.
So I mean, I just see that happen again and again. Aaron, let's play a minute of this March for Disarmament. Oh man, is this vintage? Is this Tatum? Look at all those people, man.
Okay, we're at the top of the hour. We've got Jackson Brown singing.
Jackson Brown, yeah, he used to be a big donor to Democracy Now!
Watching a presentation of KBDI and independent producers, dozens of them from across the country, bringing you live coverage of the Peace Rally here in Central Park in New York City. And this program is being presented via satellite by the Public Interest Video Network. Public Interest Video provides alternative.
Look at the size of this. No more war. I love that animation. Warheads.
Look at that.
That's
Look at that.
huge.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but there's too many white people there. We need to condemn it. But I don't know. They gotta. I saw an American flag. Does that mean they're patriotic socialists? We should condemn it.
So I think that's good.
Hold your shot.
Thank you very much. I want to thank John, Bruce, Gary Bounce for coming here too.
And this was like a happening. This was like the place to be in New York. And this was at the height of the Cold War. They would be called, what would they be called today? Kremlin.
Bueno, aquí estoy de nuevo con ustedes para darles dos pequeños resumen. Y quisiera empezar con
Spanish language media. But yeah, we get the point. I mean, that I actually didn't know about how large that rally was.
It was huge. It was massive, and it was historic, and it had an impact. I mean, a few years later, Reagan and Gorbachev negotiated the INF Treaty, and things like this had a huge impact. And now we're at a time which is as dangerous, if not more dangerous, and there's nothing. And the leftists can't even organize a unified rally. And look, I have to say, if I was organizing this rally, there are speakers there who I wouldn't have chosen. But the point is, I'm not the organizer. I didn't step up and organize this thing. So when someone does and puts in the work to put something together, then like either I can hold to my idealized version of what a rally should be, or I can accept the reality that this is who's doing the work. And so how can I not support them unless I just wanted to burn everything down? And so it's unfortunate to see this. And there's talk of now a new rally later on, but it's like, what's the point if we can't do all this together? And everything you said about, I'd happily welcome people at a rally who've, if they had politics I didn't like, or if they had attacked me personally, but it's not reciprocal. It just isn't. And you guys are a good example of that because of the stance you took about COVID. And it speaks to the fact that people are not actually devoted to the causes they care about. They're not. They're not.
Well, like you didn't agree with me, at least at the beginning, Aaron, and it wasn't, you're still here. And
yeah, no, of course.
Don't really.
Yeah.
I didn't really make it a litmus test for
no. And people who do impose these kinds of tests, I think, are doing everyone a big disservice. And it's not my lane. I'm not an organizer, and but I just look at this from a distance, and it's just unfortunate. But I have to blame Russiagate partly too, because Russiagate helped turn a lot of progressives into cheerleaders for the national security state. And it meant that energies were going into not protesting wars, but protesting against the firing of Jeff Sessions, for example, when Trump fired him. So
that was an
like
important rally that, during the Trump era, this is.
There it is.
Jeff Sessions protests, thousands march. Oh my God. This was like a huge rally in Times Square. I remember the Revolutionary Communist Party was protesting against the firing of Jeffrey Beauregard Sessions.
Yeah.
So this is why, because Trump didn't wear a mask, everybody became maskers. If Trump would have been a masker, people would have called him nuts. This is Trump fires Sessions. He's got to be good. So whatever Trump did, that's just their flex. It was their flex for 4 years. It still doesn't stop being their flex. And it's nuts. By the way, if President Trump wants to come speak if he's against the war, which he said he could end it, remember? Didn't he just come out and said if he was president, he could end the war in 2 days or something?
Yeah, he did. I mean, he's been railing against the war on Truth Social, so no one hears it anymore.
Yeah, I know. When do you think he's going to come to Twitter?
Apparently he has a contract with Truth Social, which he helped set up. So it's an exclusivity clause, and he can't join Twitter, which means he's pretty much irrelevant as far as I can tell. But he's been railing against the war. And another I grew up in Tacoma, DC, Tacoma Brightwood. On the other side of the border, the Maryland side, was Tacoma Park. And in the 80s, around the time of that rally, Aaron, that 1982 rally, and I grew up in the late 80s in DC, 90s. Throughout that whole time, Tacoma Park was like our Berkeley. It was our kind of left anti-war bastion, and they declared themselves a no nuclear zone. I remember NBC News did a report in like 1988 on how Tacoma Park hates Reagan and Reaganism and wants to end the Cold War. Today, if you go to Tacoma Park, everybody has Ukraine flags on their house. They're all like,
Jesus Christ.
and you know who has a Ukraine flag on his house in Tacoma Park is Representative Jamie Raskin, who's one of the most McCarthyite, fanatically pro-war members of Congress in a formerly anti-war district, solid blue, who's the son of an anti-war activist who set up one of the few ostensibly anti-war think tanks in Washington, Institute for Policy Studies. And his son was an anti-war activist who wrote for antiwar.com. So what is this about? It's kind of about status within the liberal world. Like Ukraine has become, it's kind of like getting vaccinated for liberals, or it's like, for them, you see that the flag on their lawns with Black Lives Matter signs, they see them as synonymous. And it's also the impact of R2P, humanitarian interventionist politics within the Democratic Party, where they now see wars as efforts to save civilians, civilian protection, whether it's Syria, Ukraine, Libya. Iraq was even sold to them. And I remember Code Pink sent a delegation to Afghanistan, and they came back and said, our troops need to stay there longer to save the women.
No. What? When? But that happened? Get out of here.
I think in 2009 or 2007. It was like right before the surge.
No.
Amnesty International organized in support of maintaining U.S. troops in Afghanistan. They put up posters, I think it was around a NATO meeting, demanding that troops stay in to save the women. So this is just liberalism today.